in my veins. Blue and one, I red, white, and blue in my brain. I'm bulldog born. Bulldog, that's my breed. I was born to follow where the bulldogs lead.
Ladies and gentlemen, long before social media counted followers, this man had an entire suburb following him. It's Dancing Dougie Hawkins.
Good on you, Matty. Good to see your smiling face, Matty.
Indeed, Dougie. Oh, well, it's great to have you on board. And guess who we're talking about today? You're going to love it.
Go on, mate. You've got to surprise me. Tell me who we're going to have a chat about.
Well, it's one of your old teammates. It's the great Stevie Wallis. Come on.
Jeez, Matty. One of my favourite players, Matty. Stevie Wallis. Come down, I reckon, from Leongatha, very young age, 19, 20. I got a feeling, Matty, early in his career, he may have broke a leg. He may have done a bad leg injury early days. He did. Mate, showed a lot of promise in that early time as well. Matty, just a fantastic player, mate. He's just a fantastic player. I want to say this, Matty, the team of the century. Now, the team of the century is hard to get into and it's hard to be picking it. And the one player that I played with who should have been in it was him.
Wow.
Now, I'm saying Steve Wallis.
Yep.
Stevie Wallis played 260, club captain,
Yes.
Played for Victoria probably on 5 or 6 occasions. Bit stiff, not winner best and fairest. Was leading in 85 at the home and away until someone come home and knocked him over. No names. War number 7, played on a wing, out a wing. The one and only best and fairest, Matty. But this is not about me. This is about Stevie Wallis. Mate, I just reckon he could have slotted into that side. It's hard for me to say this because I didn't see Wally Donald and John Gillard play a stack. Saw Gillard a little bit, obviously not Wally Donald, but not just their spot. I just think in the team, I just think he's very, very unlucky and very stiff not to be in that team of the century, Matty. I don't know what the other Footscray supporters think, or they think about my thoughts or my opinion. That's what it is on Stevie Wallis, because mate, he was a fantastic player. Not a real long kick, Matty, but always hit his target. Had great balance. Had to kick left foot, he could. Mate, head over the footy, mate. Don't worry about that. Head over the footy. I reckon later on in his career, Matty, he cleaned a few. Geez, I remember when he got Andrew Buse in a qualifying final in '92, the MCG. Poleaxed him. He got carried off the ground, and he got the boy in my record-breaking game against Geelong, the boy Hickmont, Adrian Hickmont, the red-headed kid. Mate, he was asleep when he come past me. I was on the bench with Steve McPherson and Bevo. Bevo was on the bench. We started on the bench together in that record-breaking game, and Hickmont was asleep coming past me with a bump from Steve Wallis. He gets 6 weeks now for that. He'll probably get 8 weeks. A little bit high, But Matty, what I'm saying is that he attacked the ball. His eyes were on the footy, and if you got in his way when he come off that half back flank, don't forget, Matty, I was playing centre. I was playing centre in '82 under Royce Hart, and Steve Wallis come in and took my spot.
Wow.
Royce Hart said to me, he said, "Hawk, you've been in good form in the centre. We've got a kid in the reserves who's killing them in the centre. I want to play him in the centre, and you're going to go to the wing."
Wow.
So he took my spot, Matty. Steve Wallis took my spot.
That's incredible. Well, you talk about him coming in '82, and he actually only played 7 games that season in the reserves before he broke his leg that you mentioned. And in those 7 games, Doug, he actually won the reserves best and fairest, playing 7 games.
Did he really? So what year was that, Matty?
82.
So Matty, it must have been 83 that he took my spot in the centre.
Right.
Because I reckon I was playing centre, Matty.
Right.
It may have been under Bluey. We won the last 7 games under Bluey.
Right.
In '83.
Well, '83 was a massive year, wasn't it? Bluey ended up being replaced at the end of that season. remarkably. But we had a wonderful year, and Stevie Wallis was part of that resurgence. We got Choco Royal. We had 10 new players in round 1 of 1983 come in that hadn't played for the Doggies before. So it was a big changing of the guard. And I don't know if you know this, Doug, but Steve Wallis actually holds the record from point of debuting. He's played the most games from debut to in the history, 113 consecutive games before he dropped out of the team with injury. 113 in a row.
Geez, mate, he's very durable, wasn't he? And he put his body on the line every time he played. And again, you know what, Matty? He was very wiry. He was very lightly framed. He wasn't a big bloke. Wasn't a big, solid monster bloke. He was very lightly framed. But you know what he had, Matty? He had terrific balance. He just had great ball awareness and where to get. He just read the play well. Some blokes can read the play, some can't. Trust me, Matty, trust me. Some can't read the play. Mate, he could play. He could read the play. He knew where to get the right spots. Mate, he was an absolutely sensational player. Done a good job captain in 89. I reckon he took over from Rick Kennedy, maybe, Matty, in Mickey Malthouse's last year in 89. And then I replaced him in 90 when we were going to merge with Fitzroy, and Terry Wheeler come in and said, I want Hawk to captain. He's been at Footscray since 78. I thought, Matty, I missed my chance to be the captain.
Right.
But I was a bit lucky to take Wally's spot because he'd done nothing wrong in 89. He did, even though we finished last, we were pretty ordinary. We weren't that good in the last season of Mickey Malthouse. But, mate, just going back to the man we're talking about, mate, he was a fair dinkum full deck. He was a full deck, terrific player, fantastic bloke, had a lot of success outside of football with his business in the car business. Mate, just been an absolute sensation, mate. And as I said, we're great mates. Every time we see each other, we have a hug and a cuddle. We just have a lot of respect for each other. And I'll say it one more time, Matt, he's very, very unlucky not to be in the team of the century.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the best 25 players of 100 years. He's a bit stiff.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. He's just a favourite son, isn't he? We absolutely love Wally, and you talk about him, being just a fair and strong player. He loved picking off some Geelong players. You obviously talk about Hickmont there. Buse. I think he took out Paul Couch, the late Paul Couch, a couple of times as well. I recall, and one that sticks in my mind, Dougie, and I think you were right there. It was Brett Heddy for the Eagles. It made
I forgot about that. Oh, yeah, that started the Big Blue.
Right.
That was my last game, Matty, ever. Oh, no, he cleaned the Heady up. Oh, yeah, Prince Charles. Oh, did he clean him up at the Flabbers? Didn't he clean him up? Oh, Chris Lewis come in and then Super grabbed him. Steve McPherson grabbed hold of him and they weren't keen on each other. And then I tore my groin, Matty, in that blue. A bloke called Tony Evans dragged me down from behind and tore me groin. So that was my last game ever for the Bulldogs. I didn't play in that final series, and it was all on the back of a Steve Wallis bump. Mate, it was magnificent. And I remember now Danny Southern put a sleeper hold on Peter Sumich. Nearly bloody killed him. Actually, nearly did. Gee whiz, couldn't get him off. We wouldn't let him go. But that was the Steve Wallis. You're dead right. Mate, he got a few, Wally. He got it for a ball player. He wasn't a thug. There's no way knowing Steve Wallis was a thug. He was a ball player. But if you're in the right spot and he was running straight at you, guess what? He'd run at you.
Bam, bam. Yeah, absolutely.
Great player, Wally. Great player, Matty. Great player, Steve Wallis.
Love hearing that, Dougie. Brilliant. Guess what I can hear?
Love you, Wally.
He's coming in.
Wally. Love you, mate.
Legend, Dougie. Thanks so much for bringing in Wally.
Love you, Wally.
Thanks, Dougie.
Well done.
Ladies and gentlemen, you asked for him, and we found him. Believe it or not, it's Bulldogs legend and favourite son, Stevie Wallis. Welcome to Inside the Kennel, Steve.
G'day, Matty. How are you?
Absolutely delighted to have you. We've been chasing you for a long time, and it's finally fantastic to catch you.
Oh, you can't not chase him too hard, I hope.
No, absolutely not. Listen, I want to start by asking you, as I do with all guests, how would you describe yourself as a player?
Workmanlike. Listen, I think I was probably not the most skilled player, so I had to work pretty hard at my game. And I was probably in an era that those guys who worked a little bit harder probably got a game every week and filled a role. And I think also I was probably team orientated. I probably wasn't seeking personal glory. I needed to contribute, but I wasn't a superstar like many of our other players. But yeah, more workmanlike.
Unreal. Well, we had Dermot Brereton on recently, and he put you in on the podium of his best Bulldog players ever. So you've been very modest there.
I know Dermot. I played junior footy with Dermot. We went through under 15s and Teal Cup. So he's the same age as me. And listen, we've been mates right through. So he's gone on to many good things. But no, he's a good fella.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. Well, take us back to your junior days then, can you? Back to the early 1970s. Stevie Wallis gets his first taste of footy as a little 6-year-old, I'm told, training down at Inverloch.
Yes.
Was this the start of the love affair with our great game?
I think being country kids, we played any sport. Like basketball was big, cricket was big, and footy was big. And all kids in Leongatha played sport. So cricket was a fantastic sport for us as juniors because you got to play with blokes and adults and we went right through the juniors to the senior cricket there. Footy, I probably always loved kicking the footy. It was just something that I loved. So, I was fortunate enough to probably do fairly well as a young fella, and I was a fairly tall kid for the age groups. So I went through the under 12, under 10s, under 12s, under 14s, and it was about the under 14s that I started to realise that probably things were going okay, and I was fortunate enough to get into the under 15 representative team to play in Perth, and I think that changed my whole life a little bit because I ended up playing senior footy in Leongatha at 15. So that was a big thing. I was in year 10, and that's when things changed and when the Bulldogs naturally we were zoned to the Bulldogs. So that's when they started to call.
I understand that Terry Benton was a person who came down from the Doggies, a recruiter at the time. And is it true that he invited you down as a 16-year-old to come down and play in the reserves?
That was my first time with Terry Benton. Was he put me through a 4K time trial at the local Leongatha High just by myself, and I would have been 15. And he said you've got to run for 15 minutes. You'll get a certain distance in that time and just go your hardest. So there was no one else there, and I was fairly fit those days because I relied on my aerobic sort of capacity. And he set me off, and we got to about it was about 14 and a half minutes, and I'd done 10 laps already. I'd done the 4K, and he sat there going, "Keep going, just keep going." So I ran about another 200, and that was probably above average on those days with the testing. If they get anywhere near 4Ks, it was good, but I was able to do a bit more.
Wow, amazing. So on the back of that, you came down to Footscray and you played with the likes of Shane Lovelace and a few of the sort of seasoned boys.
Yeah, back in those days, you played permit games. So I actually, Frank Good was the coach, and I saw him the other day. Haven't seen him for years. He was the coach. So we didn't get to Melbourne a lot as kids. Like the only thing you went down to was a little bit of sport for athletics or something like that. But I'd probably only been to Melbourne a handful of times in my life. And been invited to play at the South Melbourne ground on a Commodore Cup for a permit game. So I don't know any players. I don't know anything else. So I've walked in, and there was Brian Cordy, and there was a lot of Shane Lovelace. There was all these players that I'd seen on the TV, and I've rocked in there, and Frank said, "Well, what position do you play, young fella?" And I said, usually play in the centre. So I started off and played in the centre that whole game. And I remember Frank, and he told me the story the other day, the same thing. He said, "How about if this is at half time because we were going down to the Swans," and he said, "How about if you blokes take a leaf out of this bloke? He doesn't know anyone in the team and he's getting a kick and you blokes aren't." So it was new to me. I didn't have any care in the world but they were all men, and I was used to playing with men because I was playing with Leongatha with bigger blokes. Ian Salmon, an old Bulldogs player, and so it just unfolded from there.
Beautiful, beautiful. So when you were playing at Leongatha with the likes of Sockeye Salmon, were you playing in the centre at that time?
No, hard for flank. I lied, but I thought, why not have a crack at this? But it was brilliant. You know, I found as I went up the levels, it was probably easier for me because I probably had a fair bit of aerobic capacity. I could get around the ground and I could read the play pretty well. Like I said, I wasn't blessed with kicking, and I could handball pretty well, and I was a pretty strong mark, so that helped a bit.
So I guess you're bouncing back and forward. There was some games in Melbourne. You're going back to Leongatha.
No, there wasn't really. It was just after I played that permit game. Grant Oppie, who was the general manager at the Bulldogs, he's the son of Max. He took a shine to me and came down, and he made this special trip so Mum's put on a roast dinner on the Sunday night for him to come down, and he sat us down and said, "We'd like Steve to come down now." So this was in May 1981, and that was a big shock. We sat around the table. We hadn't discussed it a lot, and my dad said, "Well, what have you got to offer?" And this is a true story. And they said, "Oh, listen, we'll put you through Sunshine College. A few of the under-19 boys are there. You'll play under-19s, and probably you'll get around the $10,000 for the year. But you had to live out of that. You had to say." And Dad looked at the guy and said to Grant Oppie and said, "No money, but we want you to put him through the best school we can."
Wow.
So Grant took that on board and thought, "Oh, this is different." And I was fortunate. Grant Oppie went to Trinity Grammar, which is in Kew, and he said, "Well, I could get you into Trinity Grammar." And Dad said, "Oh, that's a deal." I remember saying to Dad, I said, "Oh, what happens if this doesn't work?" And he said, "It's pretty simple. Come home." And I thought, "Oh, what do you got to lose?" I was a young kid though, and I was living a dream down there as a family man and sport and mates and everything else. But it was enticed. Royce Hart, you probably recall, recruited a lot of young Steve McPherson, Rod McPherson, the Taylors. There was a lot of guys came through that under-19 system, which was trying to replicate what Richmond had done. So quite interesting. The deal was done on, we signed, I assume it was like a Form 4 back those days. And I was packing my bags and going to from Leongatha High, where we wore jeans and a T-shirt, to Trinity Grammar, where we had blazers, ties and cuff pants. And it was a boys' school.
Yeah, that's right. Where have I landed? Amazing. Well, it's an incredible risk to take, and also a lot of trust to put in your dad. You're not getting an income, but you've got this education that's been offered to you. It must have been otherworldly, but I understand. So you've gone through 1982 and started playing reserves footy. Am I right in saying that you played 7 games that year?
Yep.
Got an injury, won the best and fairest.
Yeah.
What?
It was just like I said, I probably those days I had a free spirit and just did what I wanted to do. The other thing was that I was pretty light back those days. Like I would have been, probably 80 kilos. And the Bulldogs had started off reasonably well that year. And I was right on I think I was emergency 5 or 6 weeks in a row. So I was just about to be called up and then broke my leg, yeah.
Wow, incredible. Well, Dougie says that he'd heard that there was a kid absolutely smashing it in the reserves, and it wasn't long because the 1982-3 season came around, and Shane O'Sullivan came on board from Carlton, and I guess there was a real revolution at the time because we just ushered in a stack of players, including your bestie and future Bulldog legend in Choco Royal, and a number of other players. How was that initiation into the club and the feeling coming into your debut season?
It probably did me a few favors. Like I might have gone okay playing in the seniors, but you can imagine 6 months of doing weights and things with a broken leg. I probably put myself in a reasonable position to start the 1983 season. Like I don't know what would have happened, but a year off gives you that time to develop. So once again, it was pretty fresh when I got there and exciting because, we had Simon Beasley, we had, Andrew Purser, we had a lot of good players that were just recruited to the club. And also Shane, who had, the Carlton influence. So there was a lot of things happening at that point in time. Bluey Hampshire was coach and, we started off reasonably well. Hawk was Hawk and brilliant, but there were some good players. There were some good players in that team.
Yeah. So here it is, round 1. of 1983. You get the tap on the shoulder. You're making your debut with another 9 players who'd never pulled on the red,
That's
white,
right.
and blue on that day.
That's
so,
right.
well, what a changing of the guard. Can you recall your first game, your debut
I
game?
can. Yeah, we're at VFL Park, and they got my dad, which is a probably traditional thing, to present the jumper to me, and we played against Geelong. It was good. And listen, I started on the bench those days. You didn't come on or didn't interchange as you do today. I came on, I think, just at half time and got, I think, about 22 touches in the second half. So it was pretty handy for me. So I never looked back after that. It was, I had a pretty good run from there on in.
To come in and to do that, you must have had an incredible amount of confidence leading into the season.
Yeah, I think I'm confident on the inside. I probably don't express it that much on the outside. I know what I can do, and I love footy. You've got to understand, Matty, when I played, I just loved getting the footy and I loved playing. And particularly with mates and doing stuff. It was a real thrill,
Yeah, well, Choco said that exact thing when we interviewed him. He said you and he would just do the extras non-stop and just kicking the ball at each other, and your hands were just so elite just from that practice. So it must have been just a pure love.
I remember when we first started Choco, they used to tell us to get off the ground because, practice. We used to have a lot of training was practice matches and stuff, and we'd just run and want to get more. I remember the senior players used to get really, I can swear on this, kind of get pissed off with us because we just wanted footy, we lived for it. And like I said, the top 10 players probably trained a lot harder than the bottom 10, you know what I mean? And Jock and I were probably leaders in that side. We influenced a lot of players probably over time with our work ethic. It didn't change till the end. I still remember we would go out there and think if we ran 5 laps, 5, that's another 2Ks we could actually do before training. You used to have to do 1 lap, we'd do 5, things like that. We just doubled up on everything. We did get told to hold back a little bit, and we got at times, I reckon, even in the 83 season, Choco had a brilliant season. Like, he was unbelievable. But there was times that we were probably getting a bit tired too, so they had to pull us back a bit.
Imagine so. Well, you must have been tired because you played something like 113 games on the trot from your debut. So you had resilience, that's for sure. Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. So despite our really exciting season in 1983, Bluey Hampshire somehow was given the chop at the end of that year, and we ushered in Mickey Malthouse. How was that appointment for you and also the club?
I think, listen, and I could be wrong here, but Bluey was doing it because he had to, not necessarily that he wanted to. Royce Hart was there prior to it, and he moved on. And I think Bluey filled the shoes. Now, Bluey was brilliant to us. He looked after us young blokes, and he encouraged us. But he actually didn't really want to be a seasoned coach. So I don't think the transition was as big as people think. I think it was pretty obvious that he wasn't going to do it for a long time. I think the timing of getting Mick Malthouse was just brilliant for the club. A young guy coming from great success. I think he was only 32 or 33. So he could relate to us guys pretty well. He had a very big work ethic, a very, very good coach, and discipline. Now, that was probably one of the things the Bulldogs lacked for years, or have in its past. So he brought professionalism, discipline, and a bit of toughness, as you can imagine. And even with myself, he changed my game a hell of a lot. During those first few years, I was pretty good at getting the ball wide. I was a receiving player. People used to say, shit, how did you get out there? Like, that's how I remember getting probably 30 touches and not get too much dirt on my knees. But he taught me how to play defensively, probably more aggressively. I used to be fairly handy with hip and shoulders and things like that, so he liked that. And probably win the ball in your own right if you were sort of getting tagged or out of the play.
Yeah, awesome to get that extra string to your bow. And he was a tough boy. I had a great chat with Tony Bahaja, and Tony and Mick had real stoushes when they were both players. So Tony was Budgie was scared to come to the club when he was enticed over just because of their combative nature.
There's no doubt about that. He tested a lot of guys, particularly the older guys. It was probably one of the things. I'm a pretty strong charactered guy, so I wanted to win Mick over that he liked you and respected you. And that was probably a big thing. And you had to earn that. Like Mick didn't hand that out on a platter. And, that over time, I got into that position where he really did respect who I was. And, we still have seen each other recently. And, he was a big moulder of my life. He made me play a different style of footy. Probably not like you said, the accolades of winning best and fairest and things, because I was doing a job on pretty good players, the better part of my career.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, by the end of '84, you'd well and truly established yourself as an anchor in our team. And we come to 1985, which was one of the most remarkable seasons, a season that I fell in love with the club. Can you take us back to the summer and the build-up of that, and the players we ushered in, and how the club really just rose?
Probably what we had was a lot of talent. And with Mick bringing a defensive element, it allowed us in '85 to be able to balance those two things, which made us more successful. So instead of just being front runners where you'd win by 10 goals one week and lose to Hawthorn by 10 the next, we became very competitive against the very good teams. He also recruited a couple of stronger body guys, which then we could compete against Essendon and Hawthorn, who were powerhouses, and even Carlton to that point. And we did need those bigger bodies because we probably had enough skill with Magic McLean, Steve McPherson, Doug Hawkins, Choco, a lot of running power, but we did need some of those, and we had good, the big guys you got a lot out of, like Gronawagon and those sort of guys, which probably aren't blessed with all the skill, but we needed those big blokes to compete against the Merritts and Simon Maddens and so forth. So that year, after Mick had been there for 12 months, we probably got used to Mick too. We knew what he was after. He called a spade a spade. You can imagine we got some fair sprays at times too. And in '84, we probably didn't handle that as well. But in '85, we knew how to handle it and we knew how to perform. So that was a successful year. And Brett Hardy was exceptional that year. Alan Daniels, you go through some of the names and an underrated player, not underrated in your view, probably Michael McLean was just unbelievable. Mickey Egan in a back pocket. You just had some really depth in the team, which made it. And Jim Edmund was bloody handy. He was a bloody handy player. And a lot of those guys had probably shown, and even probably Hawk to a point, it showed that he was a very, very good player, but stringing games together was challenging for the whole club because we tended to get rolled. I remember playing Hawthorn, in '84, '83, '84. We'd be level at halftime. We're going, how good is this? We are going so well. We'd lose by 10 goals. We put a Band-Aid on that and learned how to win. And, we disappointing end of that season. We probably should have gone all the way. We'd had great success against the top teams that year.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the finals or ask you about that in a moment, Steve.
Yep.
Absolutely. But what a year. And for you personally, you represented the Big V, alongside Choco and Hawk that year. Can you tell us about the pride of wearing the Victorian Guernsey and some of the players that you played with and against at State of Origin level?
Well, it was a pretty good year for us. We won by 10 goals both of the state games. Played one in Adelaide and one in Perth. Kevin Sheedy was the coach, and I started a relationship with him right back then. I was a 20-year-old kid who was pretty green, but loved playing and exciting. And those days they didn't play a lot of young blokes either. State of Origin was probably more about the senior people. So for me to be there fairly young, Dermot played, and we had some Ayres. There were just some brilliant players that you played with. Gary Ablett, it just was huge. And like I said though, I just took all those things as par for the course. That's what you do in a way. Probably in retrospect, it was a really big thing, but I just loved it. Yeah, and the talent. Probably that did find you out a little bit because when you find in those state games that really good players go to another level, and there's a lot of really, really good players that would find it hard to get a kick. Do you know what I mean? It's not as easy. So I found that, that I thought, geez, no, this is different. This is bloody good.
Oh, it's pinch yourself sort of stuff going
Yeah,
back and
it
watching
is.
some of
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Um,
But Dipper, I'm still mates with a lot of these guys because of that. They once again you earn a big part of my life was about earning respect, and they respected you because I remember the first night I went to the state training, and Dipper came up to me and go, I won't swear, but what the hell are you doing here? And he was deadly serious. But after it, we've had a relationship for 50 years. Yeah, or 40 years, sorry, 40 years. Just because of that, he did, they respected it, and and you probably heard a lot of the state guys that just played recently that they just enjoyed that camaraderie with the other players. And that's the same with me. It was unbelievable.
Oh, how good is that? Brilliant,
Yep.
brilliant. We love Dipper as well.
He's great.
Yeah.
He cut it. I go to the Sorrento. I go down to Sorrento a fair bit, and he's in the pub every Christmas. We catch up, and he just comes from one side of the bloody bar to the other just to give you a cuddle. Things like that. It's just, it is amazing.
Amazing, amazing. So here we are. We've made finals for the first time since
Yep.
1976 in 85. We played three finals, twice against Dipper's Hawks there.
They beat us by 60 in the first bloody game.
Come on. It was 93, actually.
Yeah. Was it 93 in the end?
93 points.
That's not good.
That's a shellacking.
Yeah. What did we beat North by?
We beat them by about 5 goals.
Yeah.
And so how were we able to turn that around? A 15-goal loss.
Once again, because we were probably lacking that maturity of playing finals and the continuity of the team, I think it was a bit of a shell shock for us. We'd had such a good season, finished on top. We'd beaten Hawthorn during the year. We'd beaten Essendon during the year. And, we probably got overawed, I think. That's all I could say. That wasn't good. But the North Melbourne game we played actually very, very well. And they were a damn good team back then too. They were a good team. But we played very well against them and fell short against Hawthorn. We didn't play our best in the Premier Final either. Like we had them, and I had a shit-house game. I got tagged that game by Chopper Hanley, and it was still a game we should have won. We should have won that game, and I think we would have been quite capable of beating Essendon because I think we'd beaten them 3 or 4 times that year, including practice matches. So anyway, that's in retrospect. It's a horrible one. I've never lived it down. It's terrible.
Dougie mentions it every time I speak to him, and he swears black and blue we would have beaten the Bombers. As you say, we beat them.
We matched up very well.
Yeah, well, we destroyed them by about 7 goals at the Kennel earlier in the year, and as you say, we beat in round 20 that year. We beat Hawks, at Whitten Oval in a mud sloshed game, and it was one of those epic. You remember that one?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Well, Dougie kicked the only goal to the Geelong Road end.
That's right. He did.
Oh my goodness, I was in the front row going ballistic. So
that was pretty normal. That was pretty normal in the Dogs. They'd have mud and wet and cold and wind. And I remember there were some times out on the outer wing that if you could kick it 25 metres, you were doing real well.
And look, you sort of briefly mentioned some of the amazing players in that season. You didn't mention Lully Bamblett.
Yep. Lully was fantastic. Terrific fella too. We had some talent everywhere that year. And like I said, Mick was a young coach as well. In retrospect, he may have changed some things to get us there. Like I said, we were just raw. We were young. We were inexperienced. We weren't seasoned like Hawthorn and Essendon. North got to that stage as well, and Carlton have been there at times too. And it's probably been the roadblock for the Bulldogs for a long time. We've never been able to hold a team long enough to be resilient enough to play at a level for a period of time.
Yeah, well, you say that we lost our captain, didn't we, at season's end? Jimmy Edmund took off to the Swans. He was enticed by Dr. Jeffrey Edelson, I guess, was splashing it around at that point. So we lost him, and a number of players were injured. The likes of Lully Bamblett and Cords, and Dougie did his knee that year as well. So a lot of things.
It can go against you very quick.
It really can. It really can. And so 86 was a bit of a down year in a lot of ways. And the promise wasn't quite being able to achieve there. But But I guess in 87 and 8, we started to build some momentum again. What do you recall about that period, Steve?
McGuinness made a difference.
Oh.
He was probably a player that was, he's not a selfish player, but he was a player that demanded the ball.
Yeah.
And you gave it to him. And he was a beautiful kick and actually ran well. So he made a difference and gave us that probably leg speed through the middle, which helped a lot. They were more workman-like times, those. I remember playing, and Mick had tightened up a little bit as a coach. So tightened up means he was probably negating teams to win rather than probably going out and winning like we did in 85. We just won our own merit on talent in 85, where when we got a little bit further down the track, I reckon we became probably a little bit too defensive. He may agree or disagree to that, but that meant, we're tagging a couple on balls. You just were winning games by tactics rather than by winning them by talent. So that was the change in that period of time. Murray Rance came about that stage too. Peter Foster was doing well. There's still some good players, but I reckon we went to a different style of play during that period.
Yeah, Terry Wallis came through as well. So we did have those workman-like players, as you say. And you mentioned Chopper Handley. So your game, I guess, changed sort of after the 85 season.
He made me tag after that. And I was good. The problem is I did it too well, I think, because he made me do it nearly every week for about 3 years. So there's some fors and against for that. One, I played state footy, was a high-profile player, but changing to a defender, you don't get the same accolades. But Mick was that style of player too. But once again, I had to do what he wanted, and it built a lot of trust and respect from him. So, through leadership and so forth. But it was at a cost too that my footy changed its shape a hell of a lot. And in retrospect, I probably didn't play to that high level, but I probably played a lot longer because of it. So I ended up playing down back, half back, and I'd always have to pick up the best half forward or best forward player because I could negate, but I also had the ability probably to win the footy somewhat. Now, you couldn't get 30 possessions, but 20 with keeping someone quiet was good. Can you recall that?
Yeah, I absolutely can recall that because, and I was looking at his stats as well in prep for this interview, and, you can see just that block of, 30 plus constantly. And then I guess there was that adjustment. And a player like yourself who just loves, as you described, getting the footy and getting your hands on it, there's that dichotomy of, I'm a team player as well. I'm doing what the coach wants. I guess it's a bit of a tug of war in your own mind of how to handle it.
It was pretty hard for me because I'd started to not enjoy footy as much, as you can. I'm being pretty honest to you.
Yeah,
it was pretty hard work. I recall I used to play on, say, Craig Badley, and I remember keeping him to about 8 possessions one day, and I would have had 10, I think. And Mick was just over the moon how well I'd done.
Yeah.
And I just looked at him and said, "We lost by 10 goals," and I couldn't understand that correlation. But he was probably trying to formulate a team that had that discipline. But it was at a cost. And one was enjoyment. And until Terry Wheeler arrived, I probably didn't get the freedom back either. So.
Yeah. Wow. It's interesting. So, I guess Mick had this big picture sort of element, but, the personal sacrifice, and you hung in there.
I'm a pretty disciplined sort of bloke. So, and I don't like to be beaten.
Yep.
So even when I used to play on Dacos and, all the good players, and I had to just tag them, Greg Williams, every week I had a good one. But I could do that quite effectively, just the style, because I was aerobically fit. Physically, I didn't mind it. But it was not fun. The fun had gone out of footy a bit then.
Yeah, I guess you would have had to have reframed it. So who were the sort of the best players, opponents that you played on?
Diesel was a good player, Greg Williams. I played on Wayne Johnson once, and he kicked a couple of goals on me pretty quick, and he was clever and very, very good. But Maurice Rioli back in the early days, Leon Baker. So I played on some really, really good players. The thing I had on a few of those guys was I had that aerobic capacity. Jeff Rains, Greg Burns from St Kilda, Les Parrish. I don't know if you remember Les. He was at Fitzroy. Just really, really, really good players. But I enjoyed that. Played on Plough a lot. I remember Plough telling me the first time he played him, he had to look. He didn't know who I was. So he said he used to get tapes of these players because he was very, very dedicated to what he wanted to do. And he remembered, he always just told me, I didn't know who you were. And I'm rustling around trying to find who this bloke was that I'm going to have to play on this week. But there's some really, really good players, over the time.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Brilliant. Plough did say even when he crossed over to the Dogs, he looked at the sheet on the way there to the game to VFL Park, and he didn't know most of his teammates because he hadn't trained. And he was like, "Who's Richard Cousins? This Rick Rushton who's going to be tapping down to me? But I better find out."
Yeah, exactly. Plough was a good player, though. Good player and a great man.
So just briefly in 1988, I was in grade 6 at the time, and I remember, Steve, we used to spend a lot of our lunch times trying to replicate the great marks of the time, the Warwick Cappers or Beasley. And there was one amazing mark that you took that day. You were laying on your side, almost sprawled in the wet, and you used your boot to kick it to yourself laying down. You remember that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Listen, my marking was always pretty good on the old mark. My hands were good. So, but I do remember that one where I sort of juggled it a bit and it went down the other way. I just kicked it back to myself. Yeah.
Oh, what a moment. Yeah, loved it. So you mentioned Mickey Malthouse recognising, your team first approach, and I guess you're rewarded in, one of the most amazing ways possible by being bestowed the captaincy of our club. Can you tell us a little bit about how that happened and the honour of captaining?
Yeah, I think I was only 24 or something, so I was pretty young, but because I had I love training, and I was probably a bit. You might realise this. I was fairly shy as a kid, not on the footy field, but outside. But over those few years that Mick was there, I probably come out of myself a little bit. I'd always wanted to do things outside of sport. And be successful outside of sport, and that's probably happened now too. So I got educated well, and Mick, we were on the same page there for a long time. Really, I respected him a lot, and wanted to do well with him. He was happy to. I remember him. One of my jobs was to test players out on Thursday night. Like if they had sore shoulders or whatever, he'd make me bump into them just to check out if they're all right. So he had a lot of confidence in me to do things. I really appreciated that. And after Rick Kennedy, Rick was a great leader. And he helped me out a lot during that period of time as well. And Hawk, he was the same. Hawk had a different way of leading, as by example, where I probably had the discipline of training and so forth.
I wouldn't want to be bumping into Ricky Kennedy and testing out his shoulders.
No, I wouldn't either. You'd test out his elbows or something like that, or knees or feet or something.
Absolutely. Well, look, speaking of Rick and your seemingly impeccable character, both Ricky and Doug, and also Choco as well, they whispered some interesting tales, actually, Steve, to me. Maybe you can shed some light on, I don't know, some stories, or three of them, in fact. One of them was a joyride in New Caledonia. The other one was a projectile in a Chinese restaurant. And the third one involved a rabbit that somehow appeared in Mickey Malthouse's office. I don't know if you can shed your light on any of those.
Well, there was three different stories. One a lot of people have heard about when we went to New Caledonia and Club Med, and Choco and I had a fairly big day, and we're just heading home, and a couple of the other players said, "Let's go and get a pizza." Now we're in New Caledonia. I've never been out of Australia. I don't know anything about it. I'm 18 years of age, and so we've hopped in all these cars that had the keys in them, and took off and ended up in jail that night. So, and it was probably uncharacteristic for Choco and I. So we were missing in the morning, and they couldn't find us, but eventually they did. Now over there, you're guilty until proven innocent, rather than the other way around. So Shane O'Sullivan come to the rescue, and we got out. But it was kept quiet in the media and so forth. Even I told my mum and dad, who didn't reckon that was that cool that I'd done that, but we got through that okay. And what was the second one? We had a bad habit of going. We used to go out for dinner, all the partners, and that's why the '85 season and Shane O'Sullivan. We had a very close knit group. All had our wives or girlfriends, and we often go out to restaurants, and food fights were fairly prevalent over those evenings. And the Chinese restaurant. I remember Super grabbed a crayfish out of one of the tanks one night, and it was a lot of fun. The last one was I'm a country boy, so we went down, and I remember Mick, when we were struggling a little bit, and this is the sort of guy he was. If we were doing it pretty tough, he'd send us home for 3 or 4 nights where we had to train with Lean Gathra, and Choco went to Bairnsdale, and he just said, come back next Saturday. It's something you wouldn't do these days, but it used to freshen you up. You go and see your mates at home and family, and we went out and had a shot one night and got a rabbit, and Choco thought it'd be a good idea if we took it down to the club. And we actually hung it in Emmett Dunn's locker first, and we gutted it a bit. So you can imagine a rabbit gutted in his office, and he's got it and swung it around, and then he put it in Mick's office. And after a day or two, it didn't smell that good either.
Brilliant. Oh, well, thanks for sharing those. So we fast forward to 1989. We've said you've got the captaincy, and
yes.
Round one, I remember I was in the front row at Princes Park against Carlton. We came out absolutely flying under your leadership. We nicknamed it the John Georgiades Day.
Yes, that's right. Kick 9.
How was that? And were you thinking to yourself, well, actually, we could be up for something here?
Well, we're optimistic. Unfortunately, I think, and I don't know the full story, but I assume Mick got poached during that year to go to West Coast. So. Whether you try to or try not to, it must have influenced the environment. And because if you put the 1989 team, if you had a look at it on paper, it was a bloody good team.
Yes.
But we lost our way, mid-season, and I think it was a lot to do with Mick naturally intending to move. Financially, the club was in a lot of trouble too, and you probably aren't aware, but there was times we didn't get paid for 6 months, and they used to come to Choco and I and a few other players, and we happily said, that's fine. And they paid that. I was never not paid though. Just understand that the club always paid, but we'd have to stop or not get paid for a period of time. And that I'm pretty sure that happened that year because we ran out of money. We more or less went broke. So the combination of this being disheartened as players, I suppose, not getting paid, a few changes administration-wise, Mick probably losing a little bit of focus toward the latter part of the year. It was a recipe for disaster, which it was.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we finished bottom or second bottom, didn't we?
Yeah, and it was all to do with money. We just didn't those days, and that's why, Matty, I applaud the position the club's in. I know we are seeking premierships every year, but I'm that proud of how that club's been conducted in recent years, with Smorgan and Gordon putting us in a position that we've got such a viable and powerhouse team and facility. That's more important to me than winning a premiership every second year.
Wow.
We will win our premierships in time, but we may not have had a club if it hadn't have been for the Wheelers of the world, the Gordons, all these guys. So sometimes we have to take heart, and you're probably going to ask me where we're going to finish up on the ladder. I think we're a finals team, but the more important bit is we've got such a viable club and well known and respected. Remember, I've always said respect is really huge to me. So that's important to me. So to come from 1989 to where we are now, I'd take that all day long over another 2 premierships, and we don't exist.
Yeah, well said. Amazing. Because I guess, you're at the Carlton nightclub for the best and fairest that night, and the bombshell was dropped that, our club was going to merge and we're no
Probably
longer going to
should have been
exist. So,
Nick Collum.
well, yeah,
And
yeah.
he probably didn't have, listen, I knew Nick, he probably didn't have any choice at that point in time or didn't have a solution. Who would thought what happened and transpired after that is, and I commend the Eddie Maguires of the world and every other team that really dug in and helped us. But it comes back to the red, white, and blue supporters that probably made it happen. And indebted, I know we go back and over and over and over, but I don't know if we can really understand how that actually happened.
Oh, just the energy. It was the entire community, wasn't it? I remember
Oh,
being in the grandstand on that Saturday or Sunday, the fight back day, after Irene, sort of rallied
yeah,
us, and Peter Gordon, as you say, sort of got up and spoke, and Super McPherson sang,
yeah.
American Pie. There was just an energy.
And I think, we've got to just respect that times. And if we hadn't have won the 54 premiership, and that brings supporters. So during that 54, 61, we runners up, supporters barracked for the Bulldogs because of that. And they were like we talk about the baby boomers today, they were the people probably in the crowd that day and putting their hand in their pocket. So you need success to develop your members. We're getting that now because we are a powerhouse club. And we're very, very fortunate that the Charlie Suttons and the Ted Wittens and so forth had that little bit of success in that time because we were pretty well respected back then. And we had a lull in the late 60s and early 70s, but the supporters hung on because they were blokes like you and me.
Yeah.
And I reckon they were the ones that fronted, and the older ladies, they all fronted on that day.
Oh, yeah. Did they what? Did they what? And, we survived. And we made it to our survival game, which was round one of 1990, which was just a carnival atmosphere.
Yep.
But, in amongst all that, there was obviously a change of coach. You handed over the reins to Dougie as
Yep.
well. How did that happen? How do you feel about that?
Listen, because of who I am, I probably handled it very well. Terry Wheeler came out to my house and explained that he'd like to make Doug captain. And I think he put in his book or one of the books he wrote or something. He said it was probably one of the hardest things he had to do because he knew I was a young, aspiring, proud person. But I took that on board for the right reason. It was, in retrospect, I think it was the right decision. And I was happy to relinquish that to Doug because we needed that and his drive, his personal person to be the front of the club. I didn't stop doing what I did as a leader anyway. I would have loved to have captained further, but it was the right decision. And I told Wheels that, and he felt very relieved. I can imagine after that. And I said, listen, and I'm happy to respect it. Once again, it's bigger than me. It was more about the club than me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's amazing to hear you say that, and
you're not surprised, though, I bet.
Well, the rebranding of the club sort of called for a Doug Hawkins type because that's the DNA of our spirit, right?
It did. Right at that time, it was the right call.
Yeah, yeah. So I hear you on that, and Dougie just thrived in that, and became the face of the club in so.
It was probably good for him too,
right?
Because I played probably more games with Doug than any other player did. So we knew each other very, very well. We teamed up very well together, and his inconsistency in his footy changed dramatically. Like he had a very good 85 season, there's no doubt, but there was inconsistencies through injury and whatever. But that really did stabilise him, and he was a very, very good leader and a very, very good player on the back of that.
Oh, I'll say. So later on in that year, 1990, I just want to touch on one game. We had like an epic game against the eventual premiers, Collingwood.
Collingwood.
Yeah.
MCG. That was great.
Yeah. So I understand there was a lot of build-up and strategy sort of preparing for the downfall. It's almost a David and Goliath. Can you recall that day?
Oh, unbelievable. If I recall, it was when the stadium was getting fixed as well, MCG, and we were the underdog every game because of the year before, and Wheels had us playing a fairly offensive game. You had Danny Delray. He made some no-names. I think Simon Atkins would have been there at that point in time. I'm not saying Simon was a no-name. I'm just saying he brought these players, that what we'd call middle-of-the-road players, to be excel. And confidence. Keenan Reynolds, you'd probably recall. Yeah, there was a lot of players that were right on the verge of whether they're either at the club or not at the club.
Right.
And he made them into players, and through a positive attitude, he'd come off great success at Willie. He was a very, very good coach, Wheels. And he used to give you a role and a job very clearly, and had a game plan that he wanted to play. And to a point, it was probably hard for some people to understand. I remember him getting up there and explaining something to some of the players. And I said, "Did you get all that?" To one of the players. "Did you walk out there?" And he goes, "Oh, no, didn't understand a word." But we got a real bit of confidence out of that. And we started to actually play some interesting footy in 90. And that Collingwood one was like a relief. It was just I think there's a picture of Wheels and a fair few of the players at the end of that game. And that, to me, that's what footy's about. You know, that moment when you can have exhilaration like that, it is brilliant. Won't forget that.
Oh, what a day. It was Billy Collingwood, kicked that incredible one around Graham Wright, and I've watched that 100 times. And I think Plough himself said after that game, the supporters came in and they just tipped in cash, just to shout.
They did.
And it was
they did.
Yeah.
And that is true. That is true.
Love it. So there it is. 1990, it wasn't to be, but we were on the rise again. 1991, you were derailed a fair bit with injury, but the 1992 season, we were ready. We felt we were ready to explode. All those pieces are coming together, as you say. Danny Delrays, who were middle of the roads, suddenly kicked 70 goals. You got Simon Atkins, state representative. So. What changed, and what do you remember about that campaign?
Oh, well, you're probably starting to get the fruits of the Scott Wests and Chris Grants and Rowan Smiths and Brad Johnsons. So you're talking legends of our club. They just matured and had a couple of years under their belt. That was what happened. Right. The style of play Wheels had was quite different to what we had with Mick, where it was a more negative style. Into a very positive forward running. You had your vulnerabilities doing that, and you need a combination of both to be probably successful as a premiership team. But and we probably suffered for that for many years. We're either right on or not quite there. So we had an up and running team in that sort of 90, 92, 93, and they were all fleet-footed, and they can run. Move the ball. Leon Cameron there then, I think, too. So you're talking some pretty handy players.
Incredible players, really.
Yeah.
Scotty Wine won the Brownlow.
Scotty Wine. Libba. So when you go back to it and when you think about it, it's a bit like Clarkson at the minute. Right. He's an exceptional coach, but he's having trouble because he hasn't got the cattle just right yet, has he? So it doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing. You still need that core of really bloody good players.
Yeah. Here we were just shy, weren't we, in 92?
Well, we were playing against men.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it felt like. Against Hawthorn, Geelong.
Yeah, Geelong.
We didn't have Ablett and we didn't have Dunstall and we didn't have those Chris Mew. You remember him? And, that big frame. We were just like a race team, we were just a racing team, that's all. So you do get found out in the term of the whole year when you do in that, and also, in finals.
Yeah, absolutely. But, as you say, Wheels was a person who was left no stone unturned. 93, he got you jumping out of planes, trying new things. How was that sort of that season? We also brought in the likes of Richard Osborne, Danny. Darcy was coming through, Rowan Smith. So we were getting the pieces. We did lose Choco and Fozzie that year, so it was maybe the timing may have been slightly out.
Yeah, I think so. And once again, we were still finding our feet as a club. We were probably working harder than other teams off the field. In other words, it wasn't easy for us. We didn't have the facilities. Money still wasn't flowing because if you recall, 96 got tough too. So I think the recipes are all about, your president down through your directors, right down the line. And if you don't get that all in line, she's pretty hard to make the club work. We've probably had that success because we've had a good line straight through the middle. I think you don't need a lot to go wrong, which is injuries as well. You get a couple of good players go down, and it really did hurt the Bulldogs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Choco obviously had his Achilles,
Yep.
and Fozzie was on the back of a broken leg. So
Yes.
there was a lot that sort of went wrong.
Well, Darts would have done his knee about then too, wouldn't he?
Yeah, right.
Or broke his leg too, or what? He did both, I think.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But we had the likes of Southern coming through. We had the seedlings, and that year as well. You played in a really special game, Dougie's record breaker, where he broke
Yep.
EJ's. Do you remember that day?
Yeah. Listen, it's another one of those special moments. Probably a big build-up for Doug. He was, such a person around the Bulldogs. He was just the person. So for him to do that and to play for him any time like that is just unbelievable. He's a terrific person, as you know. You've spent a lot of time with him. He doesn't change. He's loyal. He's loving. He's caring. He's more intelligent than he tells you. A lot more intelligent, and he plays on the idiot sometimes, but he's no idiot. But I just loved watching him play, like on his team, watching him play. The things he did and how he did it, I still used to, like if I was in trouble, I'd just give it to him, and he'd get out of it. You just gave it to him. If I was not in trouble, Doug, get it. Just give it to him. We used to use him on kickouts for a lot of times, just one-on-one. I never remember him getting beaten. No, I can't. Even if he didn't mark it, he brought it to his side of his body and just grabbed it and took off. I remember I got a lot of kicks off him because anytime he went for it, I just went straight to him. He just ran. I didn't care where I was. I'd run straight towards you because he'd give it to you every time. Beautiful.
Yeah. Ricky Kennedy said the same thing. It didn't matter, he made his kickouts look good, even if he shanked it. So you're right in saying that. And you had a front row seat. I was in the terraces, and you're basically front row to the Dougie Hawkins show. Incredible.
Such balance, and you don't realise how he used to carve through packs. You'd see it, but there's space. It's like Pendlebury, he just has that time and space, and he doesn't feel like the game's quick for him. Exactly so.
Yeah. Well, he said the same about you. Dougie said, what a balanced player Wally was. And now, just speaking of 1994, the last game of the season, the home and away season, was a bit of a famous one, Wally. It was Dougie Hawkins' last game.
Yes,
for the
that's
club.
right.
And
that was a challenging time for Doug, playing wise. And unfortunately, once again, that does affect the team's performance. When your best. You're probably your most idolised player. We feel it in the showers after the game, and you feel it around the room. So that put a bit of a division between the coach and the players, and you've got to be bloody careful of that. And it did affect us. It really did affect us.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Well, that Eagles game, Dougie's last one, right on the stroke of half time, you come barreling towards your old mate, Brett Heady. Now, I understand you had a little bit of a history with Brett. Can you tell us sort of your previous and how it led up to the collision?
I didn't know you knew this. I wonder where you got that from. But a few years before that, he was playing against us, and he'd kicked 9 goals, I reckon, or 8, might be 8 goals, 9 goals, and I had to go and play him. Now, one of the worst things I could ever happen to me when I was playing on players or tagging a player was when the coach said, you've got to go and play on this player now because he's started to get kicks. So it looked like I'd played on that player as well. Do you follow what I'm saying? So, and it happened a fair bit to me where they'd used me to stopgap. Now, I've gone on to Heady, and he kicked a goal. I think we lost by a lot that game. It would have been 1994 or something like that, or 92, 3, somewhere around there. And he goes, and I said, that you won't get another one, because I was right on him. And he said, that's 10. That's 10. And I just remembered him saying that to me. And I thought, one day I'll get you. And I did. So, but that started an all-in brawl, as you're well aware. And I remember actually Danny Southern had a bit of a run in, and there was a lot of other players. They ushered me straight down the race because they knew they'd come at me. And we were all young, pretty young team then too. But I remember Mick Malthouse came out after half time, and he comes straight up to me and he goes, "You dirty..." I said, "You taught me everything I know." And he just looked at me and just walked off.
Pop that, Mick. Yeah.
Well, Mick used to make me, we'd have a ball 10 metres apart from each other, and we had to run straight at each other.
Wow.
At training to learn how to use your body and everything else. So he taught me to be like that and go low and hard. And I had pretty low legs, so I usually could get there fairly quick, and I used to get out of the blocks all right.
Yeah, I bet. Oh, amazing. So when Brett Hetty had said that and it had haunted you all that time, was it right when you put him flat? Did you say that's one?
No, I didn't say anything. But I was very happy that it happened. And listen, if I saw Brett today, I'd say hello to him. I'm not like that, but I did owe him one.
You owed him one, absolutely, absolutely. So we advanced to the qualifying final that year, didn't we? The following week it might have been. We played against the Cats, and it was a titanic match right to the very end. And I think Aussie kicked a goal and put us in front with about 30 seconds to play. You were playing on Mensch, I remember.
Yes.
Can you remember that centre bounce and what ensued? Sorry.
Yeah. Well, that's when Billy kicked the goal. You know, Billy's my bloody son married his daughter. So I see a fair bit of Billy these days. So he reminds me of it a bit. But once again, pound for pound, they probably had a better team. But we were up and about and playing a pretty fast style, and we were bloody stiff to lose that, Stiff to lose. I don't know whether we would have gone any further or much further, but we were pretty stiff.
Well, the Cats went on to make the grand final that year. So, there's a very small margin in it. And earlier in that year...
But they were a good team. They were a good team.
Well, they had Ablett and, as you say, Billy. But you were on record, Steve, of saying earlier in that year that you felt that we were going to go all the way. I read that in a clipping. So you must have had belief.
The way we were playing and the way we were developing, we'd had a few years to learn how to play with each other, and we had a style that was pretty offensive. I don't know how well we were at defence sometimes, but we were pretty, we could go forward and we could kick goals, because Aussie kicked goals. He knew how to kick them. Delray knew how to kick goals. They knew how to kick goals. And in any footy, when you're struggling to kick goals because you haven't got forwards that can kick goals, you don't win.
Yeah.
You think back to the time the Dogs struggled. We didn't really have a key forward, did we? Or we didn't have forwards that could kick goals. Where you need a guy to be able to kick over 50 goals a year, don't you? Somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Still the same now.
Yep, still the same now. So here it is. You're coming to the twilight of your career, 95. You played 12 games, and we entered your final season, 96. You ended up playing 21 games in that year, but am I right in saying you played through some serious pain barrier?
Yeah, the last 6 games I played with a broken hand. But just injected it every week, and I probably had a bit of resilience in that sort of stuff. Like I had big injuries, but you just did that those days. I was pretty banged up at the end of that year, but that was a harder year for us as well. It was a hard year, but we needed people to play that year too. We needed everyone to play. Do you know what I mean? So I just played.
Yeah. So how did the decision to sort of pull the pin? Because, obviously Plough coming through, there was hope and optimism. And we ended up obviously making the prelim that following year. Do you have sort of flashes forward to think, what if I played on Jarman? Could I have made a difference?
Could have. I think there's a few things in it. I was getting older. I had started business, bought into the business. I had an accounting degree. I had a young family. 2 kids, and I think Josh was born that year, so nearly 3 kids. I think priorities just changed a little bit. Listen, Plough was very disappointed that I gave up. He wanted me to continue, and think I'd made up my mind the year before, and to give it my best shot in 96 and then sort of hang the boots up. There's a few things in it, Matty, and I'll be honest to you. I wondered whether the style that Plough played, which was a very quick running game, I might have been found out a little bit, and I would have hated to play half seniors, half seconds in retrospect. So that's the counter to being able to play. The only thing is I probably was determined enough. I probably would have made it work, but that was a risk. And I was banged up a bit. I had broken toe, broken hand, and was mentally wrecked, I suppose, at the end of 96. But I never regretted it. And I'm such a passionate bloody bulldog that I never felt. I've left the club on a really the best way anyone could ever. I was applauded on the way out and respected what they'd done for me, and along with a good career, it helped me in life so much. And I'm one of, I don't know how many it is, one out of every handful that actually leave the club on the best of terms, and I can go and go and support the next week. Do you know what I mean? Where some players get very disgruntled and dislike the club, or they've felt they're not. I never had any of that, so I just respected everything about it.
Yeah, credit to you. Some players go on an extra year, and it's just trying to hang in. You didn't, and you're left with the integrity and that respect that you speak about.
No doubt.
And every
and I may have
supporter
struggled.
loves you.
I may have struggled, Matty. I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Oh, look, I've played the sliding doors of our future in my mind many times.
Yeah.
So I'm not going down that path.
No.
So we're coming close to the end. I want to ask you, Steve, if you had to, we ask all players this, if you had to carve 4 players' faces into your Mount Rushmore from 1983, 82, 3 to 1996, could you make a decision of 4 players who you'd put up on that mountain?
Yep. Hawk, Chris Grant, Choco, and probably Simon Beasley.
Wow, unreal. That was a quick decision. So,
but all different players, and it's hard to pick your best player because there's attributes of different players. But those 4 significant careers in the Bulldogs, but also in their their 4 different roles or positions. They were the standouts for me.
Love it. Magnificent choice. So, post footy, post your retirement, you went on to coach, obviously, at St. Kev's.
I coached kids for 20 years.
Right.
So did a lot of state coaching, under 18s, but juniors right through, and just loved investing back in kids and making them better. Probably worked on making them good people more as much as footballers, and that helps. But I enjoyed that journey. It was fantastic. Loved it.
Yeah, fantastic.
And being able to make time for my boys to, follow them through too, which is good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to ask you about that. So tell me about the pride of seeing your boys pulling on the red, white, and blue.
Unbelievable. Like you're blessed in a lot of ways. It is challenging in some ways because you ride every bump and everything. My wife said it was a lot harder watching the kids play compared to me.
Wow.
Which just means you're as a motherly instinct, I think. But proud as punch, like Mitch was very similar to me. He had to work at his game all the time. Things weren't easy for him. I probably had a bit easier run than he did, in the sense that I probably never felt threatened to not get a game, where he always was a bit vulnerable at times, and that probably took its toll. But proud Bulldog man, he's handled himself very, very well post footy, but during footy as well. He loved his time at the Bulldogs, and held his head high.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, just another layer to the Wallis legacy. He's just loved Mitch. Every single person loves you and Mitch unconditionally. So it's a credit to
one of the good things I did was probably step. And Sue and I were deliberately doing this. We let Mitch have his own career. You probably didn't see me around the club a lot during that period of time, and that was deliberate. It needed to be about him, not about Dad and what he did and who he was and everything else. And I think that was good for a lot of reasons. We watched in the stand from afar rather than being on top of him. And, he had his own career and carved it out well.
Oh, I'll say. We just wanted him to get that 2016. If only that that didn't happen.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my God. So final question, Steve, before we let you go. I just want and you've alluded to this, but what does the club mean to you today, and how would you like to be remembered by doggy supporters?
What the club means to me is probably where we went before. That I'm proud of where they are right now and how they conduct themselves. There's a professionalism, but there's a facility, but also infrastructure of the right stuff, financially viable, a strong membership base, and they play bloody good footy, which you love to watch because you still want. There's every weekend we watch footy. You watch the teams you want to watch, and you need your superstars. We've got superstars, and we play a good style of footy. So, two really big positives. How I want to be remembered is just part of the big vehicle. We are respected. I think the Wallises, which is nice for us. That was always something we want, but you've got to understand that they've helped us in life so much, the club, and put us in a good financial position, but also a position of good people and humble people. And, they're things that the club carved out, like the resilience of having injuries like Mitch and I have had and playing in poorer teams and going through that it's held me probably in really good stead for work and life. And I know it's done the same for Mitch in the way he's applied himself in the last 3 or 4 years. So that's a legacy that how do you get that? You can't buy that. So
yeah, you can't.
I do owe the club a fair whack.
Oh, well, you would say that, but you know what? Every supporter would say the opposite and say, we are just so grateful. And for me personally, to interview somebody who I revered and as a hero, growing up right through my youth, and I modelled my game on you in a lot of ways. I just feel really honoured to have this opportunity today, Steve. So thanks from the bottom of my heart. Doggy supporters are going to drink this up.
Thanks, Matty.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, the great Steve Wallis.
Red in my heart, white in my veins, blue in my eye, red, white, and blue in my brain.